Phil Phails. Whoa, Phil Phails. Welcome to Phil Phails. My name is Phil Jones, and today my guest is Dan Workman. He's a producer and an engineer, music producer and engineer, and a psychotherapist specializing in creative informed psychotherapy. Wave to everybody, Dan.
Hey.
They live in all of these cameras.
All that space.
Yeah, and today I'm really excited to fail at therapy for creatives. Dan Workman is a master practitioner here. He's gotten there through a long life. And I'm going to give up the ghost. We know each other.
Right.
We've known each other a long time.
We have.
And I have a deep admiration and love for you.
As I have for you. We walked some interesting places together and then, wound up here.
Yeah.
How amazing.
Yeah, I think I stumbled into your recording studio, Sugar Hill Recording Studios in Houston, Texas, as a young man, 20-something years ago.
A very talented young man.
Oh my goodness. And was given the boot. There's a story our friend group tells about me waiting at the bus stop.
Yeah, it was the first time that I was going to fail. I was going to fire someone that would become very close to me, but in a much better way.
Yeah.
And
it
happened.
So I'm sure that'll play out here in this discussion. There'll be an informality to it just because we've known each other a long time and there's a deep love and connection here.
Agreed.
Goodness. This begins with Phil Phails' 5 questions.
Okay.
And these are about therapy for creatives. Okay. I'll break down Phil Phails for you real quick. In our kind of culture, we've got this idea of success over here, this binary, and failure over here. And success is like what we show everybody, what we really want to have all the time. It's sometimes like a destination. I've got this trophy, I'm successful. I got this job, I'm successful. And over here, there's failure. It's like this thing we hide. We never put on social media. That's not our pictures. It's not what we share with the world. And we never want to experience it. And part of the show and part of what I'm doing is reframing that to be success over here is kind of more a direction. More like think of a hound dog that's got the scent and is moving towards a goal. And getting kind of closer to it with every step, and with every step, getting a sense, oh yeah, I'm going that way. Kind of like flow state is one way of thinking of it. And then failure over here is like it's just not starting or not doing at all. And then everything in the middle is failure, synonymous with learning.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. In creative informed psychotherapy, we're trying to break down that binary system. First of all, some of my ideas about doing psychotherapy with creative people. Creative people are fundamentally different from sort of the normal human that walks the earth. They have learned how to make something out of nothing, make something new out of things that were old, or organize things in a novel way. That's my definition of creativity. And once somebody learns they can do this, they're like a god that walks the earth. You can do this thing that you find out other people...
It went down the wrong hole, Dan. Sure. Go ahead. You can do something that...
that you can do something that other people can't.
Yeah.
You have this power. Now, if it's something that is in a popular realm, like a performative talent, a singer or play an instrument, or you make art, you're a sculptor, you're a dancer... it becomes real clear and people start to respond to you as the person that can do that thing. Mm-hmm. And so from a young age, depending on what kind of validation you get, you come to expect certain things from the world, but you're able to do that thing that not a lot of people can. So it makes you different. It separates you from the world. It's isolating to be talented. Yeah. I think in terms of the computer programmer doesn't really understand what he does, but he's really good at seeing patterns in things.
Yeah.
And as a result, he becomes a really good programmer. He's not really aware that he's conjuring something. But the best programmers, and I get a chance to work with some of them, are they literally just kind of like go into a fugue state, think about some stuff, and then this thing kind of comes up, and then they're able to like do some things quicker than other people can do.
Yeah.
So I know all that because I know what my own journey was like, being identified as somebody that has this thing. Oh, wow. Well, maybe you'll get a scholarship, or, oh, maybe you'll play in a really popular band, or maybe you can record like these amazing people. And those expectations were both very welcome and horrible, because that set it up to where if you're not doing that, then you're wasting this creativity. It's your God-given talent. So I think that's the wrong way to look at it. So I started studying some people, some psychological theorists who basically.
Can we take a step back real quick?
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask a couple of these questions, and
shit. Yeah.
and I love it. I'm like so excited.
Yeah,
I found myself inching to the edge of my seat to follow this, and I kind of want to get these questions out quick. And the last thing I'll say, mapping to what you were talking about, is this idea of failure being paralyzing. Some of the reasons around reframing it is because I want folks to do, and when they acknowledge that failure is a part of that process, there's a courage that comes, or the bravery that comes with that. Does that make sense?
I do.
Instead of saying like, I'm not going to do this because it needs to be perfect before it goes out there. I'm not going to do this because it can't. I'm not going to be Pablo Picasso when I put the paintbrush to the medium. I'm never going to act because of this paralysis of failure or imperfection. And I imagine you deal with that a lot with your guys, with the folks you work with.
My creatives, my creative patients. Yes.
Your creatives. So question number one. Goodness, I feel bad. I was like, stop right there, Dan. We got questions.
Listen, this is all part of the creative process. Let's walk.
So how would one fail at therapy for creatives? Being like, as someone walking into your office, not necessarily as you're an artist, you're kind of a magician of psychotherapy, but as someone that walks into your office and is going to be influenced, going to take on board some of these ideas, how would they fail? What's the pitfalls along the way?
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't think they can fail. We would fail because psychotherapy is a dyad. It's the therapist and the patient, and trying to get to a place where they turn down shame to the minimum and are able to experience sort of a much wider range of emotions, with a lot more emotional resilience. So get over the really good ones or the really bad ones quickly. Metabolize what's going on instead of being, either overly attached to your emotions or afraid of them. So the failure would be if we did not have enough, if we didn't have the kind of insights that changes thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, because that's the deliverable. Therapy, we want to have all the thoughts. We want to have all the feelings. Those are not your report card. Your behavior's your report card. So I use some techniques to work with creatives to give them the kinds of insights that start to be metabolized and can start to give somebody like a new way to respond to things that they have been merely reacting to in a negative fashion.
It sounds to me like if there's no aha moments that lead to behavioral change, that'd be a failure.
Yeah, I guess so. We can call it that because, some of it is very gradual. Depth psychology, there's actually a term for it. It usually takes place over a very long period of time and builds a therapeutic relationship with the therapist and the patient. And that relationship becomes a safer and safer container to experience deeper and deeper phenomenon, emotions, thoughts, things that we would edit is like unacceptable. And, we really are sort of this weird sort of balance of things that we'll address in our consciousness and the things that are really, we kind of rather not have anybody know about.
Yeah.
And most people don't experience the world that way. They just kind of have a threshold, which the bad or the less desirable things kind of they do enough video games, or they eat enough food, or they have enough sex, or they take on new things to do. so they can stay one step ahead of things that normally would reveal themselves to them if they weren't distracted.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to get to that place where we can let those things show up and then find out what they want to teach us and what to do with them.
Yeah.
So if you were to fail, it's hard to fail, but it does happen. And usually it's because it's not a good match. Like I'm not the person that's going to be able to help them get to that place.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a very client-centered approach, like as far as like a human-centered approach where you take a radical acceptance. Folks are going to share all of their thoughts and feelings without fear, but also without extreme shame. And is that true? Is that I'm thinking like a Carl Rogers type of atmosphere?
Yeah, that's where it starts. Because once we can kind of like take the filters out and actually look and see what's there, then comes the more amazing part was like, well, what do I want to be when I grow up? Or what do I want to be as I grow up?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what have I denied myself because I thought it was either impossible, not right, not acceptable, no one would love me if I did this thing, be this thing. So yes, it's very client-centered. As a matter of fact, Carl Rogers really was, when I first went to grad school, was not held in very high esteem. It was the rise of behaviorism and everything, you know, had to be like, there had to be a metric where we could easily quantify it. Now Carl Rogers is kind of cool again. And so I lived through an entire era of psychology, or I should say I went into the music business for that era. And then I came back and rejoined Carl Rogers on his ascendancy, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
am
yet,
I giving you too much detail here?
No,
okay,
this is perfect. And yet at the end of it, there's this two-sided part where Carl Rogers, or client-centered, human-centered approach, is part of the safe container creation with you and your client. This is a safe place for you to be. And then on the other side of it, the fruit of the tree, if it's a good tree, if you nurture that plant well, is this behavioral change where they're like making new discernment, new decisions in their life, realizing things that they thought they couldn't.
Yeah. Not at the mercy of automatic reactions.
Right. It's not classic conditioning. It's more subconscious unwinding.
Yeah. It's being able to take a look at things that were either too fearful or too shameful to look at before.
Mm-hmm. Which is what's stopping you from expressing in your authentic way.
I'm going to use a term that we'll come back to later when I talk a little bit about the background of this, but it is being like your highest self, like being your best self, being, you know, a complete version of yourself. You know, inside we contain multitudes.
Right.
You know, there's the part of me that used to hate spaghetti that loves spaghetti now. You know, there's those two guys will be there fighting forever. You know, but like spaghetti, like is really winning right now. It just allows you to make some choices, and with automatic reactive emotions and reactive behaviors, you're cutting yourself out of the amazing ride of knowing who you are, and then consciously trying to be what you want to be. Maybe you're there.
Yeah.
It's really sad when I work with somebody who's really amazing and they can't allow themselves to be okay. And so there's a huge amount of like performative, like have to be this certain thing, have to do these things to be okay. People won't accept me. I won't accept me. I have to make this much money. You know, it's those metrics start to degrade sort of the human experience.
Yeah. For some reason, something came to mind is like realize their agency.
Yeah. Agency is a great word, and one that's almost kind of overused now in psychology, but it is being, you know, able to like make a choice where there wasn't choice before.
Just agency. I guess I think of it. It's within the context I was talking to you earlier about the philosophy stuff that I'm digging into.
Yeah.
It's this idea that once you come to the conclusion that it's emptiness, that it's turtles all the way down, and that there is no ground to reality, then whatever we create this is all our canvas. Life as an art form you can do what I can make this whatever I want. And there is a lot of power. There is a lot of like, I create, I guess I was raised with platitudes on paintings, like hang in there with the cat on the limb or achievement stuff.
Memes.
Yeah. But now I'm getting to a place where I'm in my life where I'm like, oh, those make sense. I can determine my purpose and my mission. I do make sense of this world. I give it purpose. I give it meaning.
Yes.
And that's kind of what you're talking about. You allow people to, well, is that what you're talking about?
Well, I think that agency, in the way that I'm looking at it, it allows people to make a choice as to what they want to do and what they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So many people come to me, and the very first thing we talk about is all the things that are limiting them, whether it's a person or their behavior or their thoughts. Really extreme versions of this would be people that experience psychosis. It's like, hey, I have this voice, and it never goes away.
Yeah.
And like high functioning people with psychosis, they are out there. They experience the thing that we do not. So to make sense and meaning of what's happening to them as a human being, those people actually teach me a lot. They teach me quite a bit. The more nuanced problems of day-to-day life, I'm really depressed because my boss hates me and I'm not going anywhere in this job. I'm afraid to do anything else. It's like we can start there, but we sure are not going to linger.
Yeah. We've all got thoughts in our head.
Yeah.
I start to think the only difference between me and some of those folks in psychosis is probably the volume of the thoughts. Like I have self-defeating, self-limiting thoughts that I have chosen to turn down the volume on and turn up the volume of other ones. But when I was younger, they were really loud and probably stopped me from doing so many things. And I'm not sure what makes them different. Maybe they're just louder, or maybe I perceive them outside of my head. But there is on days currently where I'm like, you're not worth anything. You're ugly. You don't know how. You're not intelligent. You don't know how to speak. Just a cage of thoughts.
Mm-hmm. It's exactly what you're describing, except for the person that experienced psychosis, sort of in the psychological sense of the word.
Yeah.
There is a voice or something they can see that is not of them, that is communicating with them, that has hijacked their sensorium. So they hear, they see, they feel, they have thoughts that are put in their head by this external thing.
Oof.
So if you can imagine, you're kind of at war with yourself because you're intelligent, and you've got all these different, you do contain multitudes, and some of them are arguing about what we should do.
Yeah.
And they can get loud enough to where it's cacophony, and then you kind of white out emotionally. You go act out in some way to try to get rid of that. Or make it go away.
Question 2. How does one succeed at this relationship? Is there a fuel on the fire of this type of practice? The folks that you see like really changing by leaps and bounds quickly, do you see a commonality?
Yeah, and it's really interesting. First of all, I'm trying to work myself out of a job from the first day. Some people I need to walk with a long time. Some people, not so much. The deliverable is basically therapy usually ends when either the therapist or the patient start to kind of wonder, you think I really need to come once a week? And I was like, hey, that's a new conversation, and we'll kind of go over it. Once again, we're co-creating what's happening. It's not, I'm not fixing you. I can't do that. But we can go to these places together and conjure, like what's important to you, and kind of get a clearer view as to like what you want in life, how to get there. So for some people, completion of a good course of therapy is their behavior is different, their thinking's different, their feelings are different. For most people, it's a subtle blend. Mostly, they feel like they've internalized the process in my voice enough to I can kind of take it from here. I think I'm good. And that's an amazing place to be, to see somebody get there. and think they're pretty much going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really hits me, and I'm so honored to be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where the ending of the relationship, like that's where it ends, and we terminate officially. I sort of de-roll myself, but I will always be that person's therapist, whether they come see me or not. I will always be there if I'm alive. Dead, they may have to work out something else.
You've influenced them, and almost, I guess the thing that came to my mind when as you were talking was when they leave, there's a Dan Workman voice in their head that's supporting them in some way. That now
It's the conversation.
Right.
It's less me having sort of talked to myself into the point where they can hear me. That can happen quickly.
Well, those self-defeating beliefs. Well,
yeah.
I guess I think like when you were a kid, I don't know that this is true or not, but when you wake up to life, to agency, to whatever we want to call it, and you have all these thoughts in your heads, how did they get there? Most likely they were the voice of your mom or your dad or some bully when you were a kid. They were, influences from the external world. And so I think of their time with you as balancing that out with different type of voices, different type of thoughts, different types of ideas, even if it's a invitation for them to contemplate.
It's at minimum a balance. At its highest level, they get a chance to understand what happened to them. And they get a chance to see, oh, that's where this comes from. And you don't have to have that layer of insight. You don't have to know where it comes from, but it's like to be able to understand, I have a tendency to do this. It was probably the bigger people in the world that kind of modeled this for me in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's these weird outliers where, people turn into very different people than the people that raised them. That's a fascinating thing. How did they get involved in art when they were like living on a dairy farm? That happens. The Bronte sisters, how did they possibly learn to write about experiences no girl of their age when they began writing would ever have? There's something that can happen to us, and that's a pretty cool place to be.
Is it the first thing I heard was to understand what happened to them, to understand why this thought exists or this limitation exists. And is that pointing back to, when I was in middle school, I got beat up by this guy or by this gal, or I got beat up and then I thought I'm fragile and vulnerable and I won't stand up again or something like that. Is it pointing to an event?
Well, psychodynamic therapy, which is what I practice, is all going back and looking at early relationships, early influences in life. Because before you have any say in it, you're being sort of programmed as to what acceptable behaviors are, acceptable beliefs. This is what our family does. And it's only as the kid kind of goes to school that they start to compare notes with other kids. Really? Y'all get to do that? Man, we don't. We can't. Like this, it's weird.
Yeah.
You never even think that they're showing you how, like your relationship with the two primary male and females in your life, hopefully it's mom and dad. They teach you what to expect from every other female or every other male.
Yeah.
That is the core operating system programming. So, and then from there, it gets embellished by a lot of things. Maybe Uncle Mike is really a lot cooler than my parents. I don't spend much time with him, but man, I remember every single thing we did. Things like that.
Primary conditioning occurs in the home.
Wherever that early environment is, a nice stable home with some good sort of like well-adjusted parents would be great. But a lot of us don't
have that. Yeah.
Well, a lot of it doesn't take much to make a baby, but it takes a lot to raise a human.
Yep. And to build a nest,
right?
To have that human.
Well, and to most young adults, as they start to raise a family, at least in our culture, our minds are not on sort of like, what is a way we can introduce Junior to, like, the richness of the world.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, get up and I want your socks on by the time you come down for breakfast. You know, it's like there's, and of course it has to be age appropriate, but a lot of households lack a sense of wonder, like curiosity.
Yeah.
There's not much room for curiosity when you're trying to get your 2-year-old to quit having a meltdown in Kroger.
It's
all right?
compliance. It's like compliance.
Right.
It's authoritarian.
Darling, yes. Can you imagine like why we're here? You know, it's like, how do you even do that? You know? But it can happen. And being a human is a very imperfect experience. Most of all, you know, and the people I work with and some of my favorite people just out in the world are involved in a rolling corrective experience, their original programming. They have to do things that sort of like allow them to sort of kick down these artificial barriers or allow them to see things they didn't see before. And not everyone is even so motivated to do that. It could be that like my highest version of myself is having a slightly better bass boat than Billy down the street. My bass boat's got 2 motors on it. His has 1. You know, it's like that in and of itself might be a really good life for somebody. But man, that could be the guy that's designing next level bass boats. You know, if he had the chance and the agency to realize that he might have some talents and skills beyond just catting around and being a human in a passive fashion.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. That's a lot.
That was a perfect amount, Dan.
Okay. All right. Good.
If you would have said one more word, it would have been too much.
It would have been, awful.
Question 3. And I put a note down here to talk to you later about psychodynamics therapy and MKP, which were both Mankind Project and part of their initiation thing, I think is psychodrama. But
100%.
We'll come back to it. I definitely want to talk to you about MKP. Is there a time in your life when you knew this is what you wanted to do, that you wanted to help people in this way, that you wanted to contribute to the world in this way?
Yes.
Like a watershed moment?
Yes. So when I was 16, I was given the opportunity to go see a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things going on in my family that made that a very good idea to me at 16 years old. I had seen my mom start to go to therapy, and she started talking a different way. She started having some new behaviors. And I didn't put 2 and 2 together until she told me what she was doing. And in a very 16-year-old way, I sort of like realized like I don't have to feel this way, because I already felt kind of alienated and scared of some reason from my parents, you know, just things I didn't understand in the world made me very anxious. And so I went and I saw an individual therapist. Then I also did group therapy. And about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years into that, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I was recruited into what, you know, this huge pool of wounded healers. You know, it was like you have this transformative experience either with yourself, or you see somebody else in therapy have a transformative experience. It's like, I want that. And what I realized was, if I could help other people do that, that'd be a pretty cool way to live. That's about the size of it. I was pretty sure from the therapist's office that they did okay financially, but above and beyond, that guy saw stuff that I didn't know could exist. He saw things in me. He was able to like get me to realize some things that I didn't even know were functional. They were parts of me. So I became really enthralled, and I wanted to go to school and become a psychologist. And while I did a lot of other things and stopped, college a couple of times, once I had my eye set on it, I went to grad school. I went to undergrad, completed my undergrad at the University of Houston in the honors program, which was a life-changing. We could have an entire program on that. And then I went to grad school, got into a really great grad school, and then it didn't go very well. Because number one, I had a kind of a bad drug problem at the time. Then number two, I started to kind of get some good gigs in the music business.
So the thing that got you there was realizing transformation yourself, idolizing these kind of transformative kind of facilitators of transformation.
Wizards.
Yeah.
They were able to like hurl emotional thunderbolts and conjure these crazy
and
things.
to see things in you.
Yes.
To see behaviors, to see
to show them to me.
To frame the world.
Right. I became convinced they were seeing the right thing.
Yeah. To influence and to orchestrate transformation in folks. And you wanted to be a part of that for other people.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think when therapy is done right, you create a negative space that the person begins to fill themselves.
Like that. Question 4 is, I improv these questions. And I tell you, when I write down the number before anything comes out of my mouth, I'm terrified that I won't come up with a question.
I know what my version of that is.
What is your version of being terrified of improv?
So,
fourth question. There, it just happened.
Therapy is, I would guess, a lot like improv. It's certainly like improvisation. You know, we know what the key signature is. We're trying to do something interesting here and allow us to get to some place where we can see something, then process whatever's keeping us from getting past it or enjoying it. So if a patient lays something out for me, and there are times where I can just become mesmerized with the story they're telling me. And I see all these possibilities, and they stop talking, and I don't have anything to say. Now, here's the trick. That may be perfect.
Silence?
Yes, absolutely. Silence in the therapeutic dyad is powerful. We don't like much silence out in the world. If I was to just sit here and just, whatever, just sit here and start to like look knowingly at you, like this is important. It's
probably edit that out.
It would be right. And but I have to use my own feelings as sort of like, this is the compass. We're on the deck, and like my feelings about what's going on is the thing that kind of like lets me know what direction we're headed in. And if I don't know what to say or do, I think I'm resonating to the patients not knowing where to go from here. And if we both are silent, I think that if I speak first, I might take them further away from what's getting ready to happen.
Yeah. And that they're on the scent of something.
Yeah.
And you don't want to break that momentum.
And, in some cases, they may be able to tolerate it and, be curious about it, even without words or the way they look. And then in some cases, like I give, what are we doing here? That's uncomfortable. Really, I was uncomfortable too. Wonder what were you feeling? Like, and make it okay. And then we just like it. Either one is good as long as we're both sort of like emotionally connected to what's happening in the room. Fourth question. I'll always think of it now as the fourth question.
Fourth question.
When that happens. Thank you.
I imagine silence in a world where silence is the absence of words. In therapy, it probably doesn't resonate in cameras and microphones, but there's never a complete absence of information.
Never.
When you think of silence as like nothing's going on, there is a vibe coming out of you. There's a facial features. There is something always going on. It's impossible in a dyad, an intimacy developed and realized and then, ongoing for there to be nothingness. So in that silence, even if you're in your confusion or terror, I don't want to mess this up. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do next. You're probably, just like you said, you're probably resonating with them. Your mirror neurons have gotten like, oh, they don't know what to do next. I don't know what to do next. Oh, I'm right on track. I'm with them.
Smack dab in the middle of question 4.
Yeah. The fear. But is it scary?
Or the boredom.
The boredom.
I could be boring someone to death.
You're boring them.
Yeah. They certainly bore me enough. But that's useful information, right?
Yeah.
It's like if I start thinking about, what I'm going to do after work, this person is probably not very connected with the stuff they're telling me. they're kind of reporting on some stuff.
Being here now is really important.
Yeah.
And if you're not there now, it could be because of you, but it could be because of them.
Sure. It always, like if all of a sudden I have to go to the bathroom really bad, that's me. That's a me thing.
Yeah, if you got to go to the bathroom.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we're both engaged with one another, and all of a sudden I realize I am thinking about, what I got to do after work, then I, first of all, I try to reorient quickly.
Yeah.
If it was a safe enough environment, I would tell them, did you notice something? Did you notice a little change when you got to that second girlfriend story?
Did it seem like I checked out or something?
Did you feel like maybe you were checked out and you were just automatically just kind of just telling me this because it was the next thing to say? We get the chance to once again be curious. Why did that happen?
Yeah,
I felt it.
I never thought of that. Me starting to think of something else, or like my grocery list being that the other wasn't totally engaged or was phoning it in some way.
I'm attuned to try to be very, very aware of people where their emotions and their words start to come into congruence. A lot of times, I can be entertaining and not emotionally very connected with what's going on. It's my routine. I'm at a party.
Gregarious.
We're this is where being Walter Workman's son comes in really handy because I'm basically an introvert that has killer party skills. And so I can do it. But I can leave and not remember very much at all about what I said.
Or feel any deep intimacy or connection with the people there.
If I'm doing it, I'm sure other people have that experience
too.
Is that a waste of a human hour? I don't know. It's if I can make use of it later and realize like maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I'd like to be the guy that listens, that asks a really good question and listens. Maybe that's question 5.
What kind of dude do you want to be?
At the party.
What kind of dude do you want to be? You're trying to endow me with question 5. These are my questions, Dan Workman. I'm not going to ask you what your dad's name is,
I'm just creating negative space for you to inhabit, all right?
There's a negative space where question 5 lives. Step into there. P.S. It's what kind of dude do you want to be at the party?
This is where oh man, this is good. It's I'll tell you something. I did have a thought. As we were going into question 4, my thought was, I wish I was closer to you.
You do?
Yeah. Like physically, I wish that we were almost bumping knees because that's the way I felt. I felt like I was moving like towards you. Like maybe for the first time, I put down like trying to be a good interview. And I was just like, you and I, like we're in this place right now.
Yeah.
It feels really good.
That's my goal here.
You're doing a really good job.
To relate and create an environment where authenticity, vulnerability, transparency, and honesty can kind of manifest.
Yeah.
Where all this stuff disappears and it's a combo.
So far you're doing it.
Oh man, you're too nice. Question 5. What would be a good question 5 for a master creative informed psychotherapist? You're an artist. You're a creative too.
Yeah.
Do you eat your own dog food?
To some degree, yes. And I try to teach other creatives to do that too. One of the biggest disconnects in our culture about having a talent or having like an identifiable creative act or thought or way of being is that we have to monetize it.
Yeah.
Or if you can't monetize it, at least you get a lot of attention for it. The kind of attention you want. People are amazed, right, that you can do this thing. And what that does is it cheapens the experience of being a creative. It dumbs it down to a transaction.
To a trick, trick.
Yeah, it basically.
Instead of channeling the universe through whatever, it's, I'm going to do this thing again.
Well,
that gets dog treats. Or
let's take it back to where the creative person is kind of like they have these godlike powers. They don't really understand that, but other people kind of show them, oh wow, this is special. So now you're creative. You're being creative, but there's this side distraction, which is like positive attention or people telling you what you should do with your life, how lucky you are, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's a distraction. I believe that a creative person has to create to be their highest self in order to enjoy their fullest mental health, physical health. Everything you do can be a creative act. It's going to be hard. You have to kind of allow yourself to get there in your thinking. But like, okay, I can play guitar reasonably well, but I'm a much better musician than I am guitar player. And it took me a long time to learn that. I was like, oh, I have really good ideas. I can't really execute them. That's my talent is actually at being a musician. And my best talent is that I happen to know how to tell people to play stuff in a way that they want to do it and can surprise themselves and me. So somewhere in there, I found that I was real comfortable with taking people through very uncomfortable, contrived experiences in the studio and to get as close as they're going to get to being transcendent. At that point, their biggest audience they'll ever play for is an inert microphone.
Yeah, themselves.
That's right. There's
You were practicing this with artists in the studio before.
Well, the joke
on a
is
couch.
that I was the producer with a degree in psychology, and it was not a joke. I mean, as it turned out, I was using some of the things that I learned in grad school before I dropped out to try to help people, surprise themselves.
Yeah.
Or be open to having the external, idea come in that would take them to this new place. And what I found was it was really interesting. The really, really hyper talented people that I got to work with, they didn't really need what I was doing. I knew how to kind of like, sort of appreciate them in the way to where they're going to do really well anyway, but might do a little bit better.
Yeah.
But man, taking people that weren't very good musicians and helping them make the very best record they were ever going to make, there was a certain satisfaction in that journey. Yeah. And almost noble, but not quite, because some of the music was really bad. Just really, really
If
awful.
you're watching this and you've worked with Dan Workman,
you'll just have to wonder.
Not your music.
Not your music.
For sure.
Right. So like, there was a lot of fantasizing, right, in the recording studio. You know this.
Oh, yeah.
Famous.
Yeah.
Limo's going to come pick me up off the couch, carry me to the tour bus, and
Which is the part of being a creative that is messing with your creativity and your art form. It's that accolade. It's the wanting the money, all that stuff, the shine, instead of just this inert expressing the artistic process that kind of needs to be separate from that.
Well, first of all, they can never be totally separate. I believe that being creative, even the computer programmer that's, kind of searching his way and conjuring code,
right.
There's an audience for this. Like, it could be the computer, it could be another person that's listening. Mm-hmm. So we're communicators. It's a social act. Yeah, there are people whose audience is so internalized that they don't care. Like Jeff McKissick when he built the Orange Show, right? That guy didn't care what anybody thought about it. He was doing this from this crazy map, and most folk artists are that way. Building towers in their backyard, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. They may assume everybody's going to appreciate it, but they're not trying to please anyone. They have to do that thing. So it gives us an idea of like what the pure sort of form of this looks like. But even them, they have the internal audience. Jeff McKissick, hey, red tile here, man, red tile. So they're responding to that.
Yeah.
For a lot of us, especially those of us that are not super, super talented with an instrument or a certain thing, the fantasy kind of fills in the void. It's like, man, I'll do this thing and people really like it. It'll be so cool, Nancy Allen will want to date me. It'll be, great. And that's a great point of departure to like learn about this process in yourself. But for a lot of us, we just kind of get stuck there. I want to make $1 million. I want to have my own perfume brand. I want to just fill in the blank. I want to use my skills so I can achieve this thing.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people go like, hey, I want to do a life-changing sculpture, and I'm just going to kind of put it in the backyard. Go back there myself every once in a while and look at it. Not so much. I know that for me, I was lucky enough to see the Beatles on Ed Sullivan live when I was 6 or 7 years old. I knew immediately, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Look, people are going fucking nuts. I want to do that.
Yeah.
And plus, that guitar, that looks pretty cool, you know? And so that started my journey towards the guitar. And it lasted so long. I was so invested in trying to be a really great guitarist. There was only problem is that I'm just, my left brain and my right brain glitch out as they talk to one another. And I become self-conscious in these weird ways that would interrupt my ability to like really play, I think maybe as high as my body could do.
Yeah.
So I really lingered in that area of being a really great guitar player and still to this day love it, but I just don't play it very well. But it took me towards that path of like, I know what to do. When I listen to somebody's music, it was like, okay, they may hate this, but me telling them what I hear is going to help them get to where they need to be.
Yeah.
And I just am good at it. And so in psychotherapy, it's sort of the same thing. A lot of my interventions, that's what we call it. It's sort of, it's like when you do something.
Interventions, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
Your influence.
a lot of my interventions are like sort of like fantasizing with the patient, you know, like,
did you do it to yourself? Like, I'm getting rounding back to question 5, which is, did you eat your own dog food?
Yeah.
Did this ever cycle back on yourself before you started doing with other people, or just now? Are you using these same techniques on yourself?
Yeah. What I've learned from other people allowing me into their process has taught me far more than I would have gotten to by myself, just thinking about it or just playing guitar in my room. I mean, there's a certain, you know, heroic journey, even in the most mundane thing. Dude, you're playing it wrong. What can I do to help you? Let's change the part. In one case, one case, this guy's dad, who was the band manager, which is great. Parent managers are awesome, or they're awful. And this guy was awesome. He leaned into the talk back and he said, Zach, I'll use his name. Zach, pull your pants down. And so we all erupted in laughter. Zach pulled his pants down and finally played the guitar part. Crushed it. And it was like, and I was like, oh.
Pull your pants down.
Yeah, I'm not gonna forget. Forget that.
That was not a lever that you had to pull. Like, Dan Workman wasn't thinking, I think he needs to pull his pants down. Some people
he pull his boxers down, but it was funny. You know, his pants all around his feet, and he killed it. And you know, it sounds like too good of a story. It sounds like maybe it took him a few more times. No, he crushed
it that first time.
Yeah. And then it was his dad. His dad was a really awesome person to this. Still is.
Dude. Well, that is Phil Phails 5 questions. We did it.
Boom.